Shut up and sit down.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever you're listening across the world. Welcome to another episode of Just Ball Things. With me today, as always, doing his thing with the camera, is the J-Man, Jack Manuel. How are you, mate?
Nets Nation today, baby. We had to record this one a little bit earlier because the Hornets are coming up against my goddamn BKN Nets.
That's right. What a sterling matchup that'll be.
Hey, LaMelo Ball's playing well now, mate. Gordon Hayward, he's worth that $30 million. Terry Rozier got 42 points on opening night for him.
That's true. My name is Nick Busick, and mate, it is far too early in the morning to be this alert and this active. I haven't even had my coffee yet. What is going on? But you know, basketball does not sleep. It does sleep. It sleeps during the time when I would like it to be on, which is at night. I'm really struggling to catch these day games. I'm a busy man. I've got things to do. I was out all day shopping. I'm a busy man. It's just how it is. Adult life. It's what it comes and goes. All right. You can catch us on the Twitters, and Jack has been ever present on the Twitter, has been all off season, and the new season has not baited that. The J-Man JBT and at JBT Nick for myself. You can closely, yes, thank you. We're closely affiliated with OTG Basketball. They've got an awesome podcast network and news website where you can keep up to date with all things NBA. So give them a follow on Twitter as well at OTG Basketball. Facebook.com/JustBallThings. Give us a like and a follow there. You can hit us up on Gmail, jbtpodcast@gmail.com. If you are watching us on the YouTube through OTG Basketball, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like, leave us a comment, and hit that notification bell so you know when fresh content comes out by OTG, including all JBTs and all outlets and everything in between. All right, Jackie boy, let's start with some Busick Manuel scale. This is a scale created by us that sums up how likely things are to happen in the NBA. We scale it an alternative fact, Twitter fact, Wikipedia fact, or straight up fact in that order. It will make sense. Give us a chance. All right, now to throw a whole spanner in the works, let's get to Brooklyn Bits. Believe me that we are still on the Busick Manuel scale. It's a confusing system. Jack made it. The Brooklyn Nets are early championship favorites.
Nick, this is... I'm going very low in this because you know me, I'm the pessimist. Whenever I'm on the buzz, it's always my other Nick Fay, who's the ever optimist about the Brooklyn Nets. I'm going to Twitter fact. 2-0, going into today's game. By the time a lot of people watch this, the Brooklyn Nets could be 3-0 after their win against the Charlotte Hornets, or they could be 2-1. The way that they've been playing has been championship level of basketball. They have two championship players. One is a Finals MVP in Kevin Durant. The fundamentals that are in place right now on the defensive end, especially, where I think a lot of people are being surprised, the system that is in place, the aggression, the gambling, the help defense, the swarm defense, just all of the tangibles on that end of the floor. Jared Allen's playing like a goddamn monster. Kevin Durant's locking up the likes of Jason Tatum. Kyrie Irving is showing a level of engagement that he hasn't shown since his early years of Boston. So I think that there are a lot of good things in place to be in that sort of level. And, to be a championship level team, you need to be a top 10 defense team at the very minimum. And, maybe top 5 offense, or the other way around. And I think the Brooklyn Nets offense is going to take care of itself. Steve Nash said the other day that he's been happier with the defense than the offense. I'm just like, my guy, we got KD and Kyrie over here just shooting shots from like half court and dunking on some of the best defenders in the league and one of the best defensive teams in the league in the Boston Celtics. So I think that the offense is only going to find more cohesion, and I think that there is a selfless way to the way that the Nets are playing, and they're getting a lot of easy buckets. They're looking for transition buckets. They're running hard on both ends of the floor. It's about maintaining that energy and maintaining that level of standards, Nick, that it's going to lead to putting themselves in the championship mix. Because you've got the Milwaukee Bucks, you've got the Lakers. The Clippers are going to be there even if they're down by 50 points right now to the Dallas Mavericks in one of the worst performances probably in regular season history. I'm still confident on them. I think there's going to be a blip on the radar. No Kawhi, no Clippers maybe. I guess in that sort of sense, Paul George is your leader. Oh, I don't really know. But, I think it's an incredibly open race at this point in time. The Brooklyn Nets have made a really strong statement at this early point of the season. But like I've said to Nick on the Brooklyn Buzz, if that statement remains and that consistency remains to February, March, April, leading into May, June, and July, that's when I'm going to be like, yeah, they're a championship contender. But at this point in time, I can give them some championship credit, but I'm going to maintain a level of, playing it down because I don't want to talk them up too much, even though they are maybe the form team at an incredibly early point in the NBA. But, last year, Andrew Wiggins was the MVP contender and the Minnesota Timberwolves were like 9-1. So let's just temper it a little bit, my guy. Well,
the impressive nature of both wins so far has been impressive, I guess. It's, we obviously thought that the opening matchup with Golden State would be, nice storylines. Golden State aren't going to be a bad team. Obviously, Clay not being there has hampered that. But perhaps Golden State are not the team that we think, especially given that they followed it up with another blowout loss, albeit to another good team. The Nets have taken care of business in both games so far. Obviously, one of them, and we're watching the highlights now, being the Celtics. And the defense has been suffocating. It's been...
Good word.
It's been awesome. Like, you can even see it in just the highlights of this game. There's not a lot of times when defensive plays make highlights, but there was a lot of hustle plays that just resulted in just real clanks. Even a lot of like partial blocks. I don't know if that actually counts as a block on the stat sheet, given the shot still went up technically. But a lot of defensive plays that are making highlight reels. And like I mentioned, I missed a lot of the games the other day. So watching highlights and defensive plays are often things that get overlooked. But either the highlight reel makers are doing better at their job, or it's just been that impressive. And you can see it. It kept both teams under 100, and one of those teams was the Boston Celtics. Not only that, but Kyrie Irving scoring 37 on Christmas Day. Collectively, the field goal percentage on the day was 54%. Like, I feel like it's just when you're on your day, you beat the Boston Celtics by 30 points, In a real world, that may have only been 10 points, but the defense doesn't let up. And so that is essentially what has won you this game. The 54% from the field is just sort of the cherry on top. In my preseason preview, I put the Nets in the championship game. So it would be silly for me to say that they're not championship contenders. And the play so far has been great. I mean, so far so good.
As a person who has grown to like the Brooklyn Nets over the 5 years that we've been doing this podcast, have you been surprised at all, Nick, by the play of the Brooklyn Nets, or did you expect this because you predicted them to be in the NBA Finals?
I think the caliber of coaching and I feel like they were just ready for this. Like you get the sense from teams that sort of either slap together players or coaching staff that they're picking up. And I'll bring English Premier League team in Man City. Like, we've been guilty of this a few times. Like, deadline day comes, we spend big. With no real purpose, no real scouting, no real rhyme or reason. And there's not much to scout with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I mean, they are very well-known quantities. But I think the way that they've set up their organization, obviously the foundation that was set there by, Sean Marks and Kenny Atkinson, really paves the way for what Nash and the plethora of other coaches that are there are able to do. And I just feel like they were ready. They were like the most prepared team in the NBA. And so I guess that is a surprise given the acquisition, giving the complete overhaul in coaching. But I just felt like there was rhyme and reason to every decision that they made, and it seems to be paying off so far. That stability is so important, and we're seeing that through two games. Yeah, we're seeing that through 2 games.
There's a real collective buy-in from everyone in terms of their roles. Karis LeVert's that 6th man. Everyone playing that level of team defense rather than sort of just, sort of leaving it to, if KD misses this assignment, then Jared Allen's going to get it. It's, you know what? No, I'm going to remain engaged here. So I think that collective buy-in and, whether it's a culture sort of thing with Steve Nash as well, he's got a great level of emotional intelligence and he knows how to set standards. He has the respect of Kyrie Irving. He did take back those comments that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago on the pod. So I think it's all good things at this point in time. But again, it's 2 games into the season. So I'm not necessarily going to
Let's overreact, Jackie boy. Let's overreact. 2 30-point wins. You'll beat the crap out of Charlotte today. 3-0. It's looking good. It's looking good, buddy.
I will always underreact, Nick. This is like me in 2007 with the Geelong Cats, and they ended up winning the premiership by like 119 points. I really hope that's going to be the case again and history repeats itself, but I'm certainly not going to count my eggs before they're hatched. Yeah, that's the saying. I'm pretty sure that's the saying.
Count their chickens before they're hatched.
Whatever, you correct. You're not here to correct me, mate. You're supposed to support me. You're my co-host. But Nick, we will move on to a man that returned last night, and we were going to do this pod yesterday, and thankfully we've got a bit more to sort of talk about. We've got some of his highlights to look at. James Harden, Nick. James Harden's legacy will be for his off-the-court antics. I mean, he put up like 45 and 17 last night, so he's certainly trying to make us forget about, going to strip clubs and keeping masks off and going to Vegas, all this sort of thing. What are your thoughts, Nick? Do you think that James Harden's off-the-court antics are overshadowing some of his, awesome exploits that he's always shown whenever he goes out there and balls?
Oh, of course. This is, it's the first game. And so he's going to have this cloud lingering over his first game. And I think he produces a few more games at this caliber. And knowing James Harden, he certainly will. Then I think the naysayers will, be quiet a little bit. Portland seemed to go through these, transitions in era, like from year to year. And so I can't remember which Portland it was last year, and I can probably get some stats up to corroborate it. Were Portland a good defensive team? I feel like they weren't.
They weren't last year.
They weren't last year. They were. Yes, that's right.
I think they were. I think you're right on that. I think they're the use of Nurkic.
I feel like they've fluctuated over the years of being super good. They haven't been like this identity of being either really bad or really good. So let's say this trend has continued, and maybe this is a blip in the radar. 44 points against potentially a bad defensive team. And a lot of people will say, well, James Harden could put this up against everyone. That's very true. But given the offseason that we've had, who knows if he can still do that? He has definitely come out of the season a bit more Nick physiqued rather than Jack physiqued.
Come on. We're all putting on weight.
Yes, but let's compare my physique to a professional athlete. It is certainly chunkier. And, shooting mechanics generally won't change with weight, but how much lift you can get off the ground, blah blah blah, all of that can significantly impact a shot. I mean, we're seeing him drain some absolute rainbow threes now. His first step is still absolutely dynamic, and I feel like it's going to be like a Shaq season where he will like play into shape, given he had no preseason. Not really, but I still think he cares. I still think he wants the ball. Especially if he wants to get traded or, I don't know how long he's got left on his contract. He's still got a long time, I believe.
I think it's 1 or 2 more years, to be honest.
Yeah. So for him to be traded, he needs to put all of this offseason behind me and be like, hey, antics are antics off the court. But when it comes down to game time, I'll put up 44 points for you. I'll, try my darndest, even if it is just on the offensive end, to win these games. And that's important.
Look, it's a fair point, Nick, but I'm going to look at the whole big picture of it all. And, James Harden, what he's been doing in this offseason, rivals the likes of Dennis Rodman. And what do you remember Dennis Rodman for? The Vegas trip during the finals and all those sort of different things. Despite the fact that he's one of the great defensive players in the history of the game and one of the great rebounds in the history of the game.
He's also remembered as a great player. Like, he was the number 3 important player in those championship teams. Like, people certainly remember Rodman for his defensive acumen and rebounding.
I don't disagree, Nick, at all in that respect. But we're talking about, the casual fan, the person who watched The Last Dance. What are they taking away from that? That Dennis Rodman went to the WWF and went to Vegas during the NBA Finals. That's going to be the lingering memory for him, and that's going to be the legacy for them. For us, for basketball guys that, are obsessed with the game, we naturally gravitate towards wanting to be like, look how good they are as basketballs. Don't forget about all that off-court sort of stuff. But it just naturally is the way it is, especially in like a sort of celebrity-driven sort of culture and a personality-driven culture that we currently live in. And it probably did begin probably from Michael Jordan onwards. He was probably, Magic, Larry, MJ. Those guys ushered in the sort of superstar notion, legacy, the personality, all the sort of behaviors on and off the court. So for me, James Harden's legacy before these off-the-court stuff was being the guy that couldn't put up in the playoffs and the guy that was the regular season dude, similar to Russell Westbrook. They know how to get those numbers. They know how to get the MVP. They almost prioritize it maybe too much so, and it leads to, less productivity, an immediate thought that comes to mind, and this shouldn't be the case because James Harden's one of the great offensive players in the history of the game, is the Manu Ginobili. I remember that. That's something that lingers. The shooting stars meme, and just seeing James Harden go flying, that lingers in my head because that is when you are in the upper echelon of superstars in the history of the game, not just in the current trajectory of the game, in the history of the game, your standards are much higher. And James Harden could put up 44 and 17 against the Portland Trail Blazers in Game 1 of the season. But what's he going to be doing come April, May, and June? Is he going to maintain the consistency? Is he going to be playing basketball consistently? I just think that there's right now, and I think a lot of his off-the-court stuff, we heard Adam Silver say, oh, it's Christmas time. We don't need to punish him. It's just like, he's doing stuff that is not just like reckless in NBA rules. It's reckless and dangerous in the current world that we're living in.
Well, he did get fined. He did get fined for that.
$50,000. Kyrie Irving got fined $50,000 for not doing some media, and James Harden gets fined $50,000 for going out to public places without a mask and saying, "Oh, it's just my friend's event." My guy, you should be fined like whatever Houston's laws are probably a lot more lax than they are in other parts of the country in America, but I got really pissed at that, Nick, because I think that me and you share this similar sentimonies when it comes to, the general buy-in from people and the selfish nature of some people. And James Harden has shown a level of selfishness and entitlement that we talked about in last week's episode and episodes before about player empowerment. His entitlement and selfishness is going to be, maybe define his legacy as a guy that, always wants to play that ISO game. I'm going to get my numbers. But when it comes to the down brunt of it, I'll rather go to the strip club than, put up 50 points in a game that when it really does matter. If he gets traded to a team that has that success, and apparently he wants to go to Portland now and Boston and Brooklyn and Philadelphia.
Anywhere that's not Houston, Jack. Anywhere that's not Houston.
Anywhere that's not Houston. By the end of the season, he's going to be playing for the Sacramento Kings, Nick.
Rebuild the Houston Rockets in Washington. We'll take him. Russ and...
the new version. Okay, see, I like that.
Russ, Beal, and Harden on the same team. That's a championship contender, buddy.
I probably would be. I'd watch that.
I think you're being a little bit harsh on a guy who, through 12 seasons, this is the first time this has ever happened. And you're comparing someone to Dennis Rodman, who had a propensity to do this. I mean, this was his life.
But James Harden has done it. We've heard this from the reporters that are in the know at ESPN and such that said that this culture has been defined by the entitlement of James Harden. And while we haven't seen them because they haven't been on Instagram, there's the whole Reddit thread. One of the great Reddit threads.
But he's never missed season games. He's never missed. Like when basketball's on. After the season that just happened in Houston, and it being shorter preseason, he can. Like I said, I can totally get around why he's doing the things that he is doing.
But he should look. If I wouldn't give a shit, to be honest, Nick, if we weren't in a pandemic right now. I would actually be like, this is cool, this is fun, this is good content.
Yeah, but this is the general, the general feeling across all of the states is that this pandemic is, just another part of normal life rather than something that can be abated.
Normalizing behavior, Nick, only makes that even more so. And I don't want to lose the sentiment of the fact that we are in a pandemic. Yes, vaccines are coming and hopefully, but like I sort of said, I think that his behavior is so reckless, is so, so toxic that it overtakes his legacy of on-court production. I think that it's that bad.
I don't think that much. One off season, like 1 month of this, can undo 12 seasons of.
In a pandemic, Nick, I think it does.
No, I don't think so. And and given the clandestine nature of
yes, Nicky,
of the pandemic and how it's being treated, I don't think many people will. I think this will just be a weird off season with the rest of the weird year that was 2020. And it'll be put to bed as soon as James Harden starts producing the storyline. The media cycle will move on, and that'll be it.
Look, I could be proven wrong quite quickly, and my own thoughts could and will likely change depending on what his journey is like over the next 9 to 12 months. But at this point in time, that's for me what his legacy is, because I'm so. And maybe, it's a bit self-righteous of me to say, I'm offended by his behavior. But I'm offended by it because of the nature of it and how it affects others. Not because it affects me and my moral compass, but it kind of does as well, because anyone who shows a level of selfishness and entitlement to be like, I'm too good to follow the rules and I'm above the rules and I don't have to show up to my job. I don't have to do these sort of things. That pisses me off in a way, Nick. But
does it piss you off when Kyrie Irving does it, or just when James Harden does it?
Is Kyrie Irving?
Oh, he's not following the rules of his contract with the media things.
The lives of others, Nick.
No, but it is selfish in the same respect that you were saying that James Harden was. I'm playing devil's advocate here, Jackie boy. I just want to see where your allegiances lie.
I spoke about it on the Brooklyn Buzz with Matt Brooks and Nick Faber when we were recapping those sort of comments and the controversy on the Buzz. And Matt made a really good point. He's self-righteous, but he can also be, this really lovely guy and also be really engaging at the same time. Yes, there's a difference between self-righteous and dangerous and reckless. I don't think Kyrie Irving's behavior is dangerous and reckless. He can speak some verbal diarrhea, as we've both sort of iterated before, but he's not putting the lives of others in freaking danger. Like, if Kyrie Irving were doing what James Harden was doing, I've given a lot of shit to Kyrie Irving in the past, and I've been called out on Twitter. People have got receipts on me, my dude. They've taken screenshots of it. So it's not that I have a level of bias. And of course I'm going to have some level of bias, but Kyrie Irving's behavior, and I think I spoke about it a little bit on a previous pod, pales in comparison to flouting, the restrictions on a fucking pandemic when we all need to show a level of buy-in and selflessness. James Harden is doing the complete opposite of that. But Nick, we could go on for a while. I do like the banter, the back and forth on it. But I think we're probably both going to be in unison with this, even though our preseason predictions might be going out the window. Nick, Golden State won't make the playoffs this season.
I mean, it's not been good. It has not been good for the Golden State Warriors so far. Obviously, the loss against Brooklyn in the first game, which I don't think anyone saw the caliber of loss. I'll phrase it like that.
Right.
Yeah, and then who was their second loss to? Okay, yeah. I knew it was another good team. It's 2 hard losses, but these are the guys that you need to at least, get maybe one win against, to maybe split the difference and not get blown out by. Show us that you've got something. I mean, not hitting 100 points in either of these games. I think Steph in both or maybe one had a very poor shooting game.
He was 7 of 20 against us, I believe.
Yeah, that may have been the one that I looked at. And you need more. You need more from someone like Steph. He can't be putting up 19 points and you think that you're going to beat the likes of...
Do they need more from him, or do they need more from the likes of Andrew, I'm going to try on defense, Wiggins?
But Andrew, you can try. I'm going to try on defense Wiggins. Like, you know what you're going to get from him. You know, like that is a very much a known quantity. But if you're the Brooklyn Nets and Steph Curry puts up 19 points, that's a win. Like,
but I think it's so much easier to scout the Golden State Warriors at this point in time. And obviously, you add in a Draymond. I think he adds a level of dynamism on the offense as well, because he's a great facilitator in the open court if he remains engaged. And obviously, defensively, one of the great defensive players in the history of the game. But I still find it funny, Nick. I remember specifically the moment. It's funny because we started this podcast in London. I think we talked about Andrew Wiggins and his contract at the time. And I remember listening to a podcast and getting off the tube and about to walk back to my place, and it's just like, he promised the owner Glenn Taylor that he's going to play defense. That's why he's getting the $29 million max contract. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to promise to do like 5 podcasts a week. Can you give me like $20 million? He hasn't done. He's been so one-sided that it is scary about the lack of growth that he has shown as a player. And, I think Minnesota got out well, being able to get D'Angelo Russell out of the deal. And obviously that pick is, the way that Minnesota are playing right now, it might not be that great of a pick, but we'll have to wait and see how it. But, Kelly Oubre as well. There was this sort of initial impression that it's going to be like this athletic, dynamic team. They're going to be running a lot. They're going to be showing great sort of, length and perimeter defense and all those sort of different things. So it's just like, these guys aren't good basketballers. They don't have the level of skill to be better than just athletic dudes. And yes, Kelly Oubre is sexy as shit. And oh my God, he's just a pretty dude. But in saying that, I think that
he's not an offensive player. Like, you can't give Oubre 10 field goals attempts. Like, he is not an offensive player. He is there to facilitate. He's so good with his hands on defense. He was never that player at the Wizards. He was starting to fill out his offensive shoes in Phoenix. But I truly think that he needs to be your defensive guard and your defensive wing, I should say. Is that enough to be give you 20 minutes a game? Possibly. But we've seen Wiseman. Wiseman can ball. Wiseman can ball
right now. Yeah.
Wiggins having 18 shots against Milwaukee is an absolute travesty. Steph Curry needs to be bumping his numbers up to, he needs to be taking 25 shots a game. And if not shooting, then his assist numbers need to be quite high. 6 assists against Milwaukee, admirable. But if Wiseman's there kicking out onto the pick and pops with Wiseman would be a very lethal combination. We've seen his propensity to shoot the three, and he's very, very good. And this may be, this is news to me, but people who follow the draft possibly not. It's just it feels like the shots are in the wrong place for Golden State, and whether that's maybe a lack of preseason to integrate, Wiggins and new players. I'm not sure. But then everyone's in the same boat, no one had a preseason, or not to the same level. Maybe the Golden State Warriors pick it up maybe 10, 15 games in. Is that too late in the West? Probably. So this may be a fact, Jack. I'm not going to put out a hard fact, but maybe it's a wiki fact.
Yeah, I'll go Twicky because it's 2 games, Nick, and they're versus, like you mentioned earlier in the pod, 2 of the better teams in the NBA right now.
But it's more the quality that we've seen. It doesn't matter that they lost, but they lost by 40 points against Milwaukee.
Yeah, look, it was bad. It was bad. And I don't think that they are that bad, and I think that having Stephen Curry and a bunch of miscasts and sort of just guys who are one-way players in a lot of respects, just Steph needs more around him. Steph can only do so much, and I think that Steve Kerr needs to create a more, when he is there by himself, a more heliocentric offense where it's just like, let Steph be James Harden, see what he can do. He's that special and that talented. Give him 30 shots a freaking game. You don't want, like you mentioned, Kelly Oubre taking 15 and Andrew Wiggins taking 18 shots. Give those 5-10 extra shots to Steph because he's Stephen Curry. He can make those shots. He is one of the great shot makers in the history of the game. So, look, I'll go Twicky because I'm obviously much less bullish on their chances. But I also do think that, that sort of 6 to 8 in the Western Conference. Look, Sacramento, San Antonio, and Minnesota have had some great games as well. So I think it's going to be an absolute slog when only like one team in the NBA is actively trying to sort of tank, and even them. OKC bet the Hornets the other night, and they're not doing a great job of it. So look, it's early days, Nick, but like you mentioned, the signs are certainly worrying. But play that Wizards Warriors music for me, pretty boy.
The Washington Wizards is making noise.
I drank some bleach all the way down to the blue, and now I'm starting to feel like Harry Potter.
Usual slappage
Bang
from
up.
the Wizards Woes music. Jackie boy, I'll lay this one on you because I'm already speaking. Russell Westbrook's impact over just a few games in Washington has been profound.
Look, it's a fact, Nick. It's been profoundly bad on the defensive end. Now, just joking. I'm just trolling you, my guy. But it has been pretty trash on the defensive end.
But it doesn't matter because everyone else is playing defense, kind of.
Yeah, but I mean, Bradley Beal has been really, really good there. Isaac Bonga, we know, is a really good defensive player. I just think that, look, let's just focus on the good. A couple of triple-doubles already. Russell Westbrook showing leadership and a culture driver that we sort of mentioned in previous pods. Bradley Beal is still playing all-star level basketball, even if they don't vote him in as an all-star. I think that things are okay in Washington right now. And obviously, he's out tonight, for their game. They're back-to-back against the Orlando Magic, and Raul Neto comes in. It's going to be interesting to see how it all sort of pans out. But I think that the version of Russell Westbrook that is currently on the Washington Wizards is what I sort of expected. A guy to be putting up his triple-doubles. A guy to have really inefficient nights as an offensive player, but still have like 15 assists, like you sort of mentioned in your dumb prediction that could happen.
It'll happen. It will happen, Jack. It will.
What's he averaging at this point?
He got 15 in the first, 12 in the second game. So what's that?
13 and a half.
13 and a half. It'll happen, Jack. It'll happen.
Let's end the season right now so Nick's dumb prediction can actually happen. But look, in saying that, I think that offensively and leadership-wise and then culture-wise, it's been a marked impact, and that's factual. But man, your take the other week of him saying he's a good locked-in defender could not be more off base. That's your dumb prediction and dumb take that I think is going to come back to haunt you.
So far, come on, he's 2 games into a new team, a new defensive scheme. Like you said, like
his own coach.
I know, but we were talking about this before the podcast, and you were saying that he gambles a lot, which is why he's in such precarious spots defensively, and I think that's very true, and that doesn't mean he's a good defensive player because he is. He just puts himself in situations that don't help him defensively, but I think in a half court set is where you'll see him sort of shine.
Really, I think I prefer him more on the open court when he gets his own rebound and he can
no, as in like defensively. So if we're set on the half court and he's not sprayed on the ground and he has to sort of come back and then assume position. So if we've scored a bucket, I mean that will generally happen when we've scored a bucket and we can set up because his help is good, his feet are good, and there's no reason why he can't be a good defender because he is active and alert.
I'd say the same thing about Andrew Wiggins, though, Nick.
Of course.
He should.
Of course.
All these guys that are athletes should be good defenders, but until you are a good defender, you're not. And when he does gamble and he's sort of like, "Oh, why aren't you covering me? Why aren't you giving me that help?" Like, dude, that's Thomas Bryant back there. It's not freaking Rudy Gobert. Like, seriously.
And I feel like he's got to learn. He's got to learn the team around him. He doesn't have the sort of dynamic plays he had at even Houston. Houston were a pretty good defense last year or the year before. Again, they're another one of those teams that was like fluctuating madly.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
In defensive rating, and so you're not going to have the, Isaac Bonga is not a PJ Tucker. He's not able to move and switch as easily as these athletic guys because that's the system they built in Houston, and it's just going to take some time to learn the defense. And right now he's just putting on a clinic offensively kind of like facilitating and all that. Still not shooting the ball well. I mean, 31% from the field against Orlando was possibly the reason we lost, but also giving up 130 points to the Orlando Magic was also the reason we lost. So maybe the defensive woes have not have not subsided for Washington. But yeah, like this is he has been impressive. His energy has always been there. I just honestly think we're missing Rui Hachimura a bit, which is a bit of a weird thing to say.
Any rotation player at this point, Nick, I think you need to just have that level of depth and health. I think it's going to be the key driver to success. When it comes to my Brooklyn Nets, if we have our superstars healthy for the large majority of the season, we are going to be in that championship sort of realm. If the Washington Wizards have the large majority of their rotation healthy, they're going to fight for that playoff spot or play-in spot or whatever else. I'm bullish on the Wizards, and I'm more bullish on them with Russell Westbrook now, even if he is still the Russell Westbrook of old and gambles and just is inefficient as a player. But I think that for the most part, the good outweighs the bad.
Well, this is, I mean, the Magic game is a good sample, and granted, it's one single game of where the Wizards are lying offensively. You get Thomas Bryant shooting 8 of 11, 3 of 5 from 3, and early on we were saying that the facilitation, that's not the word.
Yep. No, facilitation's a word.
Okay. That Russell Westbrook provides will boost Bryant and will boost Bonga. Bonga shot 4 or 5, and I have no doubt that actually 3 of those shots were from 3. He hit 2 or 3. But then the shot distribution between Beal and Westbrook, again, very in line with what I was saying should be ideal. Russell Westbrook took 19. Bradley Beal took 24. Rightfully so, Bradley Beal had 39 points. Where I think, Bertans didn't have a good game that game. Ish Smith.
You can't play him and Russell Westbrook at the same time. Some lineups and rotations from Scott Brooks are just
and he said that.
You can't have Ish with Russell Westbrook.
He said that. He said that he's got to figure out something that, you can have a constant rotation of either Beal or Westbrook or both. It's growing pains coaching as well. Like, it's all well and good for me to say, Westbrook needs to learn the players around him, but Brooks needs to find a way to incorporate Westbrook and to find his best lineups and when to play them, and that whole chess game that is coaching. And so it is, equally on his part as well. But, I mean, the less minutes we give to Ish Smith, this is a fairly black and white take. The less minutes we give to Ish Smith, the better. I truly... 4 of 9 was better than I thought he was, because I watched this game while I was at the shopping center. Like, I watched the last quarter, and he was just bad bricking shots and just poor decision making. Not a fan, and so I guess if Brooks can find a way to even out the minutes for the guards, which would possibly mean not playing Ish Smith 22 minutes, which I think is too much, then, I'm all smiles.
More Neto. We'll have to see how he goes with the starting lineup tonight, and, we'll get more Wizards woes, or, hopefully they're not so woeful going forward.
Hopefully they're not so woeful, that's right.
Today they weren't so woeful. But, Nick, we're going to bring back DBS, because there's, why not? Do we have the music?
We do have the music. Hopefully this works. Oh, yeah.
Drop.
Steven, I like your hustle. That's why it was so hard to cut you.
Bench.
No! God, please, no! No!
Start.
All right, that's more like it.
This is DBS.
Bit of a mellow one compared to the bangers that were... it still slaps. It still absolutely slaps. All right, Jackie boy, let's get started here with some DBS. DBS stands for drop, bench, start. We'll give you 3 players, who you dropping, who you benching, who you starting, between Trae Young, Ja Morant, Jamal Murray.
Now, guys, let us know if we are right or wrong in the comments. Let us know when I'm putting this out on Twitter and promoting the pod. If you're here on YouTube, make sure you hit up those comments and flame Nick and I for our wrong, or give us a lot of credit. We need to be validated. We get little validation in our daily lives. We need it from random internet people as much as possible. Nick, for me, I'll go through just what my 3 is. I'm starting Trae Young. I'm benching Ja Morant. And I'm dropping Jamal Murray. Are you in agreement or?
Yeah, I think so. Surprisingly.
There we go. Wow.
I mean, Jamal Murray is... I still have these images of grandeur in my head.
Yeah, the bubble was insane, Nick. If we're judging him on that, he's number one on this list because he's produced in the playoff performances. But his start to the season and, in the top 50, Corey Waldron and I for OTDbasketball.com, we had probably the largest disagreement about Jamal Murray because I was a lot higher on him than he was.
It's hard. He's a hard nut to crack because of... he does this shit. God, it's so frustrating. And I mean, I am thankful enough not to have to produce a top 50, top 100. So thank God for that. But yeah, it would be... He's a nightmare of a player, so polarizing, and shows you glimpses of why he can be, a top 10, 15 player in the league. Like, he's absolutely amazing. And then other... times where he doesn't.
His start to the season has been poor, and there's probably a lot of multitude of factors around that. But it's Trae and Ja have been a bit of a conversation on Twitter of late and on social media. So I thought that I would bring these two because that's where the discrepancy does lie. Nick, is there a way, or is there a future or a route where you see Ja Morant overtaking Trae Young as being your starter here?
No, Trae is just... He's so good.
But what about his defensive inefficiencies? Whereas Ja has the athleticism. He could be maybe like a John Wall type in his sort of peak. And he's also well-rounded enough to, he's not as elite as a passer as Trae Young or as elite a shooter as Trae Young. But he does those things pretty damn well. And Ja Morant is just... I mean, it's hard to sort of downgrade him because he's just such a fun player to watch as well.
Yeah, but personally, I prefer Trae Young, as in like his brand of play, and that's not surprising because I love Steph Curry, and I think a lot of people do.
Steph at least shows effort on defense, and it isn't like a traffic cone out there. Whereas Trae Young has been, and the key to the Atlanta Hawks showing a level of growth is him being a not god-awful 500th worst defender in the league defender. If he can take like 50 spots jump or whatever it is, that's why I think that there is a realm where it can be like, Ja Morant. Ja Morant led the Memphis Grizzlies to a near playoff spot last season, and without Jaren Jackson, that final game in the sort of play-in tournament, he's just so goddamn good, and he finds a way to read the game really well. His floater game is just really nice. That shot's so good for him because he doesn't have to throw his goddamn body around like a rag doll, even though he does it anyway. I think that there is a realm when we see Ja Morant sort of be like, Russell Westbrook, John Wall at their peaks, and one of the best point guards in the league. But I do like that there's this sort of like online beef sort of being created by Twitter people and such, because these sort of player one-on-one things, it creates good drama and content and beyond the game. It's good for the game, I think.
Yeah, it certainly is, for sure. It creates the storylines and it creates healthy debate. I think the point scores in these two games is why, and I think it's very, it highlights very much their style. So Trae Young with 37-36, whereas Ja Morant with 44 and 28. So Ja Morant's sort of fluctuation, again, two games, but I think this is very accurate to who these players are. Whereas I feel like Trae Young, despite the fact that he can go bonkers and possibly go for a 55, I feel like you're going to get more 30-plus games from a Trae Young than a Ja Morant.
I think that's better. Like you mentioned, Nick, sorry to cut you off. I'd prefer more 30-point, 10-assist games than 50-point, 5-assist games from Trae Young, because that's where I think that the Atlanta Hawks' ceiling and success does lie.
That's fair. I just, I don't know. I get the feeling that, and this probably isn't a correct statement to say, but I'm going to say it.
Go for it, mate. We got a podcast.
I just feel that the Trae Young affects. No, I'm not going to say it because it's not right. I was going to say Trae Young affects winning, but I probably don't believe that. I just think that Atlanta are a better team.
No, yeah, I think that's a fair... Look, it might be the point this season because he has a better supporting cast and guys who support his defensive weaknesses.
Just given what Jamal Morant did last season and in the season before.
But so I don't think
the last season.
I don't think that Memphis have that much more greater a roster than the Atlanta Hawks do, to be honest. Look, you look at the comparisons of like the starting five, Jonas Valanciunas and Clint Capella. Clint Capella is a better defender, but Jonas Valanciunas is just an awesome, steady presence at that sort of center position. Dylan Brooks is hit or miss, and, so can Kevin Huerter in that sort of respect as well. Kevin Huerter doesn't always start, but, the Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter, these sort of guys, Gallinari. I think that there's similar roster compositions, and I think that there's something brewing there. I think that when you comes down to the pointy ends of the season, your weaknesses get exposed a lot more. And that's for any player, not just Trae Young. And you can game plan for that, and you can hone in on that. And that's where, James Harden gets found out, Stephen Curry gets found out. All these guys who have certain weaknesses in their game. And Kyrie Irving, for Boston, a couple of years ago, you target that one player who has a level of weaknesses or defense or offense or whatever. If they are a one-way player, then you can scout for that. I think Ja Morant is good enough as a defender right now that I don't think you can. I think that his mentality, I'm not, arguing that, he has a more like locked in sort of mentality, but I love his competitiveness as well. Whereas sometimes, and this might be an incorrect take as well, but sometimes it feels like Trae Young is going out there to put up his numbers. Not all the time, and I think this season it's going to be a difference, but I think in previous seasons he had a level of being like, you know what, I want to get mine because the team is shit right now, so I'd rather get my own and show up in Sports Center and House of Highlight. Whereas Trae Young is always just like, you know what, I'm winning or dying out here, and I want to kill myself to get this W. So I think this is going to be an ongoing debate. If we revisit this at the end of the season, I wonder if the argument is any closer, because right now Trae Young's probably not the easy starter, but he has a little bit of a heads up on Ja.
I think it's the 2 wins. Like Atlanta's, Trae Young's games came both in wins. Granted, it was against Chicago and
Memphis.
And Memphis. It was against Memphis. And Morant's have come in 2 losses. But that could be enough to sway. And 2-0 start compared to an 0-2 start definitely can.
Winning.
Mm-hmm. And I think, it's just amazing how this has evolved into a tale of two players when this was a topic about 3. And it's just like Jamal Murray.
We're discounting
Jamal
because Jamal Murray's on the best team as well.
Yes,
but,
that's right.
Jamal Murray's also on a team with Nikola Jokic, one of the most transcendent centers in the history of the game.
Yes,
so that's maybe where their success does.
Well, Jamal Murray's not the number 1 on that team, whereas Trae and Ja Morant most certainly.
And the thing is, though, there were points where he was in the bubble. He was
of course
putting up 50 points and leading the team in clutch points and clutch wins.
There was the discussion as to whether this had become Jamal's team.
No,
and I think I was hard making the point that it had, like in the playoffs, it had definitely shifted into more of a Jamal Murray focus.
And I think in saying that, Nick, it's always easier if you are a small guy to get your shot. You can create your own shot a little bit better. You have a little bit more quickness. Most people have a little bit more quickness than Nikola Jokic, but we love our thick lord here. He is our thick lord and messiah. But yeah, it's always going to be easier for, Trae Young to get a shot than Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid in a lot of respects. Not everyone can be Anthony Davis. So not everyone can sort of be, that sort of hybrid. Or Kevin Durant, where you're 7 foot and you technically should be playing center, but you play like fucking Kyrie Irving. Sorry for the swearing, guys. I've sweared a couple of times in this pod. But yeah, in saying that, this is a fun discussion, and I'm glad we could bring DBS back. And especially in the quieter week of basketball, we don't want to get too takey yet. We already have, and we always will. We always bring the takes on JBT, but we'll bring back, off topic and DBS when it remains true and when the time calls for it.
Damn right, Jackie boy. We will be doing us because you know what? It's our podcast and we can do whatever we want. 5 seasons of it. Something like 150 odd episodes.
Yeah, I'm going to check that. Yeah, we might get up to 200 this year.
Might get up to 200. Who knows? All right. That just about does it for another week. So we'd just like to say thank you for tuning in to Just Ball Things. You can, as always, you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Player FM, Spreaker, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to your podcast. We will be there. Do us a solid as well. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating, review, 5 stars. Will help us out a bunch. If you're catching us on the YouTubes through OTG Basketball, that is at OTG Basketball. If you want to catch us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave us a comment, and hit that notification bell so you know when fresh content comes out by the OTG network. So remember, it's you guys that make this show great. So we appreciate any and every post heading our way. So until next week.
Keep balling, superstars.